Hi, Shalom. Double honors to the apostles of GMS, on the street brothers that be pushing this truth and sincerity. This is going to be a short video, part of Lord's willing, an installment. This is going to be more like an intro to it, because I want to get real in depth with this one because it's quite relevant to the times that we're getting into, and it's talking about the 3 world wars. The article I'm going to be using is from a website called just that, right? 3worldwars.com. All right, where relevant, I'm going to be touching on the scriptures. Like I said, this is just the intro part to it, and where relevant, I'm going to be looking at different things that's happening out there in the news and all of that. So it might come out to like 10 parts and that. But today I'm just going to focus on the intro section to it. Alright, so I'll start off in the scriptures, namely in the book of Revelations, the 18th chapter. Rather more the 8th chapter, and the 13th verse. Alright, it says, "And I beheld, and I heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, Woe, 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 right, to the inhabitants of the earth, by reason of the other voices of the trumpets and of the 3 angels, which are still yet to sound." All right, it's talking about those 3 world wars, and every search that same word woe. Rather more, 1 war is past. You get the same thing, alright? Is it 1 war? We'll see when the results come back. I think it's two of them. Alright, this is gonna be in Revelations the 9th chapter and the 12th verse, and Revelations the 11th chapter and the 14th verse. So, it reads there, 1 woe is past, and behold, they come 2 woes more hereafter it. Alright, so that was going back to, and the way this book is written, man, it's a hard book to, it's a hard book to read, man. The book of Revelations. Alright, but through the Spirit and through the edification that the elders give off, it really becomes quite easy. Alright, and if I just jump up to the 11th verse, alright, in fact we can go up as far as I'll go up as far as the 6th verse. Alright, it says, "And in those days men shall seek death, and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them." Alright, and that's all spread across the 3 world wars that was going to happen, man. People were going to be seeking to find death, man. It's going to be real hard out there, man. Alright, I pray, how shall I be with me, man? Right, because life's kind of tough now, man, but you gotta imagine, right now you can obtain food by whatever means, man. Alright, you can get some kind of funds to live your so-called life and all of that, but them times there, man, it's gonna be a tough time, notwithstanding, man. Right, the Lord said he's gonna look after his men. Alright, he says, "Behold, my servants shall eat." So those will be I'll be the servant of the Most High in that day, man. I won't be part of this law, which says, in those days men shall seek death and shall not find it, and shall desire to die, and death shall flee from them. It says, "In the shape of the locusts were like unto horses prepared for battle." Alright, it says, on their heads were as it were crowns of gold, and their faces as the faces of men. Right? It says, and they had hair as the hair of women, and their teeth was the teeth of lions. It says, and they had breastplates like the breastplates of iron, and the sound of wings was like the sound of the chariots. The sound of their wings was like this, as the sound of their chariots running for battle. Now, if I'm not mistaken, that's describing those chariots that they rolled up in, man, right, in World War One, namely them those warplanes, man. Right? It says, and they had tails like the tails of a scorpion, and they were stings in their tails, and their power was to hurt men 5 months, which is a spiritual number, like 5 indicative of power, if I remember correctly. It says, and they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Greek tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue, his name is Apollyon. Right? It says, one war is past, and behold, they come 2 wars more here, 2 more wars hereafter. Right, so that was talking about what happened in World War One. There's 2 more wars that was going to come to pass. All right, and let's jump to the Book of Revelations, the 2nd chapter. More the 11th chapter, and this 14th verse. Right, it says, and the 2nd war was past, and behold, there cometh a 3rd war quickly. Right, so it's coming quick, man. Right, you got a lot of people within the circle of Israel. Right, and I think that this war's not coming, man. It's just gonna surely come, man. It's gonna catch, don't make it to where it catches you unawares, man. All right. Now, if we get into this article now, we're gonna see exactly what we're dealing with. All right, the things that we're dealing with, right, and the relevance of it within the modern news and all of that, right. And if I go back, just going back because I got my notes here, the scriptures, right. Just going back to the Revelations, man. The 9th chapter, 7 verses talking about men in them helicopters, and Apollyon, if my notes serve me correctly, it's talking about Kaiser Wilhelm, right? And pretty much that's all the information I have on that at the minute. So I mean, there's good breakdowns on there if you want the full thorough breakdown of everything and what it means and all that. But the point I wanted to bring out in this particular verse, into this particular scriptures, is the fact that you had 1 war here, and behold, they come 2 more wars after, right? And that's exactly what happened. You had the 2nd war, and now we are at the precipice of the 3rd war, right? So without much further ado, we get into this article, right? And it says the planned World War III. Now, we have to understand this. The Most High really has planned it. We zoom out a little bit. Really, the Most High has planned these 3 world wars, and he's having it to where the so-called white man believes that he's in control of these 3 world wars, but the reality of it is he isn't. He says a 3 world war scenario was developed several decades ago, right? And like I said, man, matter of fact, let's go to this bit since this is the intro, so I can go into this. It says, definition of conspiratorial history. It says, with thanks from Ralph Epperson, author of Unseen Hands, an introduction to the conspiratorial view of history. It says, 2 views of history. It says, there are 2 fundamental ways to view history, right? We call one the catastrophic or accidental view of history. We call the other the conspiratorial view of history, right? It says accidental. In the catastrophic or accidental view of history, we are led to believe that historical events such as wars, right, and revolutions were the direct result of some sudden or surprising event, all right, And what's always often interesting, this word conspiritual here is always synonymous with truth, man. Accidents and theories, man, is always synonymous with lies, man. It's never, you never. I mean, either cases can never be proven, but the most logical and simplest reason and solution is usually the most. Is usually always the correct one, right? It says, such as our wars and revolutions were direct results of some sudden or surprising event, right? Jump down to conspiratorial history. It's just conspiratorial history studies that are that part of history that is a product of man's planning, right? So certain events were planned out, right? It says in a conspiratorial history, we are led to believe that the events such as wars and revolutions are results of planned events, right? Jump down to the cause of war. It says the cause of war, right? The wars start when a nation moves into the territory of another. Now, that should let you know that America is already at war with all the world, man. Oh, that should let you right there know, man, we're already at a world war, because America's all over these different countries, man, causing all kind of havoc. All right, it says depressions occur, and when markets take unexpected downturns, inflation occurs and prices are driven up by shortages. And it says revolutions start. You see that all throughout the world, man. All right, revolutions start when the people always spontaneous rise to overthrow the existing government. All right. Now, in fact, let me just carry on reading this this bit. See if we can get some more meat out of it. We go to conspiratorial view of history. We've already read that, right? But now this is talking about the causal one. It says historical events occur by design for reasons that are not generally made known to the public, but they are well known to those in power, right? And if we go to the historical, which is what the day-to-day beliefs, which is historical events occur by accident for no apparent reason, rulers are powerless, right, to intervene. Now, the easy way, one sure way to know whether who set up what on, or what's happening with what, man, right? Is to see who benefits from that, man. Right, and when you see who benefits, that's usually the people that the reason why that particular event happens. Now, who benefit from World War I, World War II, man? So-called elite banking families, man. All right. You can bring it back down from the days when the Negroes, Hispanics, Native American were in hardcore bondage, which we still are now. Right, who benefited from all of that? Right, these Edomites, man. Right, so it ain't no great big conspiracy, all of that, man. Right, just watch who's benefiting, who's making the most money out of it, and you figure it out, man. All right, now let me jump to a couple of more key points before I close up the intro side of this thing. All right, and I'll jump to the timeline. Right, because when you read some of these articles, man, you remember the person that wrote this, man. They put a lot of vain words in there, like what's this and what's that, man. We know what war is. But as a matter of fact, I guess it'll be relevant to read this. So let's say world war definition says, what constitutes a world war? How many countries need to be involved? It says who decides at which point a number of regional skirmishes, right? I believe that's what it's called. Can be grouped together, right, and called a world war. And at the time, who called the official World War I and World War II? It says, and And we have and have you noticed that although the term World War III is freely used in alternative press and on the internet, all major news networks have stoically avoided using the phrase resistance of World War. Right? That's because they're led by these elite banking families, but that's why they don't use the word World War. Right? So since it is difficult to find a definition for an event, right, we have which has only happened twice in modern history. Here's an attempt at an answer to the question: what constitutes a World War? So, World War is a military conflict spanning 2 continents in which at least 20 major countries, right, participate in an attack against a common enemy, right, and which they has the attention of the man in the street due to the significant loss of life. All right, it says it goes into a timeline here, which I'm going to get. And it says with that definition, we can agree that World War I and World War II were in fact world wars. Both wars involved some degree of participation from most of the world's then existing countries between France, Italy, Japan. Right, it says, and the United States and the Soviet Union. It says we can also agree that we are very close to achieving World War III. Right? The only requirement left to fulfill World War III is a military conflict spanning 2 continents. So that's it. All right, and here's the meat, baby. Here's the sexy. This is the sexy information I was looking for right here. All right, it says as soon as Israel attacks Palestine, and what are you hearing in the news right now, bro? What are you hearing in the news, man? All right. As soon as Israel attacks Palestine, or North Korea attacks South Korea, or the US, or China invades Taiwan, we'll have the next world war underway. And that's all. Oh, baby. That's lovely right there, man. So that lets you know what you should be watching out for, man. All right. And that's in the following up lessons, part 2 and 3 and so on and so forth. Right, I'll be touching on the conflict between North Korea and South Korea, right, and North Korea, US. Those will tackle that in one lesson, right? And China and Taiwan, right? Because and obviously the Israel and Palestine thing, which is what it's most likely gonna be, man. Because that goes with the scriptures, but even North Korea goes with the scriptures as well, where it talks about the smallest. Of them, the least of the flock shall draw them out, right? So, because North Korea Israel is small in the grand scheme of things, so it's unlikely to be China and all of that, man. Right? It's most likely going to be Israel. I think I'm not quite sure if the scriptures explicitly say if them Jews is going to bring them out, but I know it says the least of the flock is going to draw them out, man. Right? Well, let me just wrap this up real quick. Looking up at the timeline, it says World War III timeline. It says the events leading up to the start of World War III, including September 11th, the so-called 9/11 thing. It says Act 1, the Middle East, widespread conflict to bring the entire region into flames of war. Right, probably triggered by Iran or militants in Pakistan using North Korea supplied nuclear arms. It says the first scene in the act. In this act is the U.S. invasion of Iraq, which they did in 2003. It says Act 2, Israel at war, all right? So this is where we're kind of at the minute, man. Israel at war against the her Arab neighbors, possibly Palestine, right? A Palestinian state will be established, so Israel will be fully separated from Palestine. Right, it says, listen up for mention of a 7-year treaty to be confirmed by a world leader, probably Bush, only for Israel to viciously attack Palestine shortly hereafter. Right, it says, Act 3, Far East, hair-raising nuclear confrontation that threatens mankind's existence. Peter Lemersura, author of the Armageddon script, right? And so he took it out of there, right? In 1981, it says includes China invading Taiwan, right? And the nuclear eruption on the Korean Peninsula, right? It says act for erosion of confidence in the system, so severe citizens will be panicked into giving up liberties and constitutional forms of government. It says the plan calls for the dissolution of our U.S. Constitution triggered by a significant enough terrorist attack. It says the ultimate intent is to introduce a global government and a one world religion, right? It says the collapse of the U.S., right? It says in other Western economies and morale. And the last act is significant population reduction using natural or man-made disasters. And they said certain who can tell how this will end. But really, when you go into the scriptures, man, right, you know how it's going to end. It ends with, you know, a superpower that they've forgotten about, all right? A power that's not listed on there, man, all right, which is the government of Israel, or the government of the Negroes, Hispanics, Native Americans. So they're all fighting a little turf war about something they're never gonna obtain, man. It's all in vanity. Right, because when you go into the scriptures in Daniel, the 2nd chapter, on the 44th verse, man, right, you know who's going to obtain everything, man. Right, in the days of these kings, what kings? The kings that are fighting all of this war, man. Most High is going to establish a kingdom that shall never be destroyed and shall never be left to other people, all of these bloody heathens, man. All right, but with that, that'll be pretty much the intro, all right.